Okay, I admit that I had an entirely different open to this episode, which I recorded last week. But thanks to the melted circus peanut that is Donald J. Trump and his endless criminality, I had to scrap it. When I recorded last week, we knew that indictment was imminent. We didn't know what imminent meant, of course. We certainly didn't know that imminent meant like the next day. But I guess when you've been waiting for accountability for the better part of the last 7 years and it decides to just show up overnight, well, you make adjustments. So here we are on the Monday after Donald Trump was federally indicted on 37 counts, by the way, and we kind of have to talk about it. The indictment is batshit crazy town. Like, we knew it had to be bad for the FBI to search Trump's gilded golf motel back in August of 2022, but I gotta admit that I did not have a chandelier full of nuclear secrets on my dystopian bingo card, and here we are. I mean, that guy had documents in his ballroom, in his bathroom, in his dining room. He had them like out by the pool for coasters. The place was dripping with nuclear secrets. And every time the National Archives asked for the shit back, he would say, I don't have it. And then have his body man, who by the way has also been indicted in this case, move the stuff. And he took the documents with him to his vacation home. Basically, these are my toys and you can't have them. Of course, those documents didn't belong to him. They don't belong to him. There's also a handy transcript of him saying essentially, I'm not supposed to have these documents. These are super duper secret, but look at this. Like, you really can't make this stuff up, folks. It's beyond parody. And while it's funny that he had a bathroom full of boxes of nuclear secrets, it's also incredibly terrifying, right? He hoarded national security secrets. He willfully retained documents containing the nation's most sensitive secrets, including our nuclear programs and foreign countries' nuclear programs. He showed some of them to friends. On at least 2 occasions he did that. And then he lied to obstruct the investigation into their whereabouts. He even said in response to the federal government's attempts to retrieve those documents, I don't want anybody looking through my boxes. I really don't. And he even asked his lawyers what would happen if they just didn't respond at all. Like, just ignore the government. According to every legal pundit and expert, this was an incredibly detailed indictment. Lordy, there are tapes and lots and lots and lots of receipts. And as special counsel Jack Smith said when he addressed the country about this indictment, we have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone. So while everyone from feckless Mike Pence to Lady G. Lindsey Graham to Donald Trump Jr. is out there saying right now that Hillary Clinton didn't get indicted, blah, 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 and that Trump shouldn't be indicted because he is the front runner for the Republican nomination for president, blah, 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 I say this. Donald Trump is not above the law. No one is above the law in this country. And at the end of the day, either we are a nation of laws or we are not. No, I didn't talk about this indictment with Ron Filipkowski in this current episode, but I'll get to it on the next episode with George Conway. But make no mistake, Ron and I talk a lot about Donald Trump, and we talk about what the indictment would and could and should mean for him. So it's definitely worth a listen, and definitely make sure to check out next week because my conversation with George Conway about the indictment itself and the ramifications and implications of this indictment is a pretty awesome conversation, if I do say so myself. So, well, with all of that said, let's get to the interview with Ron Filipkowski. Okay, so my first question, now that we know that it's either duh or DeSantis or don't know, so that's just let's kick it off there with how weird that is, that we don't even know how to say his name because it changes. But overall, why is he so flipping weird?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of speculation about him being on the spectrum or having Asperger's. I've heard that as a common theory which seems very plausible given what we know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, if you go back and you watch like old videos of him when he was in Congress, so different than now. His voice, his dress, his hair, his physical appearance, the way he talks, the way he walks, everything is different. So yeah, it's been this strange metamorphosis, and it switches back and forth. You know, the other funny part was, I know this is different, but Casey, you know, many people, the clip I posted yesterday was the first time that they heard her speak. And it was funny to read the replies, because I think the way she dresses, you know, like the Disney princess outfits and stuff, people always thought she was like this Stepford wife, this demure, shy person. But in Florida, we know that that is completely not the case. Many people think she's the boss. She's the driving force behind his ambition. And so when they heard her speak yesterday, a lot of them were kind of taken aback at, like, she doesn't sound at all like we expected based on her looks. Mm-hmm. And I said, yes, this is what I've been telling you. And you saw him standing off to the side, just like squirming while she's talking.
There's so much to unpack there, right? So I saw that article a while back about how she and he feed each other, sort of like they both have this need for revenge, and they're like grudge holders, and that some people say she is his greatest asset, but also like holds him back. And I mean, we could get into the white boots thing, but like she was responsible for the infamous white boots, but she clearly has her own ambitions, and she had them from day one. I mean, she had a career in like broadcasting, right? Before they got together.
Carrie Lake, she was a local TV journalist. Yeah.
Right. But they both have this same penchant for like revenge.
Yeah. The vindictiveness, the grudge holding. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think her political instincts are just bad. Yeah. And they're just bad. Like the Top Gun ad was her deal. The Build the Wall ad was her deal. There was another ad, the God created a governor ad was her. That was her deal. So yeah, I mean, her instincts, she has this view of him and how he should be presented that I think is completely disconnected from the average American voter, you know. Right. And so I think that, yeah, I mean, the time that she was out, you know, when she was undergoing her cancer treatment, I don't think it's any secret that that's when his poll numbers really went up. And that was during his campaign for governor. It was probably his most successful from a popularity standpoint period of time. That's when she wasn't there from a day-to-day basis as his political advisor.
That's really interesting. I mean, the whole thing about both of them is that I often think that Ted Cruz is the least self-aware person in the Republican Party.
Oh, for sure.
But Ron DeSantis really does give him a constant run for the money, his money, because like he and Casey both, like you said, her political instincts are as bad as her fashion sense. You know what I mean? But it's like they do sort of mirror each other. It makes sense that she dresses like she's some Camelot, you know, princess, and they do think of themselves as, you know, JFK Jr. and Jacqueline Kennedy. That's Jackie O. That's how they think of themselves. It feels that way, and it's completely detached from reality.
So when you have a guy like him who's got like Asperger's maybe or some kind of hangups, and she's constantly like in his ear going, "You have to smile more. You have to be more relaxed. You have to do this. You have to do that."
You have to be thinner.
He has a hard time sort of, I think, processing all of that, you know, advice. And so this makes it worse, because you can almost see him when he's being asked questions thinking like, what did Casey tell me to do again now? Like, oh yeah, she told me to smile like this, and she told me to stand like this. And you can see that him processing that, and it makes it just worse, you know?
That's how
the best advice is like, be yourself, you know?
Right. And so I've never seen videos of him when he was in Congress. The first time I ever became aware of him, honestly, was the Build the Wall commercial. I have to go back and look for that. I've never seen that. I was introduced to this version of him, you know, and the first thing I ever saw was Build the Wall, that stupid commercial that really honestly like set me on fire with rage, because I couldn't believe they used their kids in that way, but it was also just disgusting. But the thing, back to your point, these awkward gesticulations where you're like, everything feels unnatural and
Yes.
forced, and like he's running through a playlist in his head of what he's probably instructed to do by her. This is how you look real, approachable. This is how you look like relatable. And meanwhile, it comes across as anything and everything but. His interactions, that infamous now, the interview when he got asked by that reporter, I think they were in Japan, where he had that awkward like thing that he did with his head that is now a gift forever. And then there was that laugh at nothing where his entire body heaved in this completely unnatural, bizarre way. And you're like, this is a person who doesn't even know. It doesn't seem like he even knows who he actually is, or if he does, he's trying hard not to be that, because it's like so awkward.
He thought that his policy would overcome his deficiencies from a personality standpoint.
Yeah.
So when he gets up on stage and he rattles off, and when I was governor of Florida, I did this and I did that and we did this and we did that and that's where woke went to die. That's where he's sort of at his best, is that scripted thing where everybody in the audience is friendly. But the second he gets out of that environment and when I saw him talking to the people and moving through the crowds in the diners, it's so weird for somebody from Florida to see that, because we never see that in Florida. Like everything he does in Florida is scripted and controlled. The people he comes in contact with are all friends of Ron DeSantis, like there's no hostile questions. So now he's getting that, where he's like walking through crowds and reporters are shouting things at him. And this is an environment that he cannot handle. And he's not equipped to handle it constitutionally. So that's why I thought like he would be a disaster on the campaign trail. And he's so far not disappointing. And what makes it even worse is the Trump people, who, as you know, better than most, are very vicious and brutal and just horrible as far as attacking you on your looks, your personality, your heels, your this, your that.
Yeah.
I mean, you got them piling on. So he's getting hit from Democrats, from media, and from MAGA.
Right.
And it's just like he's just a punching bag right now.
It's created quite a quandary for me, because I equally loathe him and Trump. So I find myself agreeing with like Don Jr. when he I don't know if you saw it, but Don Jr., who I despise, posted a video today where they doctored the end of "my last name is pronounced winner" to him saying "my last name is pronounced meatball." And
they're brutal.
I hate that I love that. I hate that I love that they called his Twitter announcement a disaster. I hate that I love that, because I feel like I'm aligning myself with the enemy and the devil. But like I've said it repeatedly, you and I have had this conversation. I am so here for those two destroying each other. But I'm so curious as to what you think that looks like stretching out, not just now, because what we're looking at now, I feel like, especially Don Jr., but obviously Trump with calling him meatball, Ron DeSanctimonious, Rob DeSancto, which is like ridiculous, but they keep punching him and he's sort of just like flicking back. I don't feel like he's fully sinking his teeth into the fight, and he has to. So I mean, he has to. What does this fight between them look like? And how? Is there any path for him to emerge from this fight and defeating Trump?
I do think there's a path. If he does the right things, listens to the right people, and everything breaks his way, I think there's a path to him defeating Trump. I don't think there's a path to him winning a general election unless something really bad happens with Biden. But I don't see that, because let's just take that first for a second. What's going to happen if he wins? Is Trump going to go, okay, guys, Ron beat me fair and square. Now it's time to unify and get behind our guy. And I'm going to back him 100%. I mean, that is inconceivable, right? There's no person who thinks Trump will ever do that.
No.
I mean, there's a handful of DeSantis supporters who thinks that he will do that. And I just laugh at that, because that will never happen. So he will do everything he can to wreck Ron DeSantis in November, everything he can to undermine him. So that's why there's no path to him ultimately winning. But I think there is a path to him beating Trump. So to go back to what you said, though, Republicans are much better at negative campaigning and attacking than Democrats. It's just their thing. It's what they're best at.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it has been really great to watch them it's sort of like a battleship with guns on it, to where those guns were like trained on me or you or Joe Biden or Swalwell. And now they've like taken the guns on the battleship and they've kind of turned it on DeSantis away from us. I feel like this is great. Like, this is a nice break. Like they're not attacking me anymore. This is wonderful. So that's part of it too. Yeah. Watching the Trump people and the DeSantis people go at it is just great, because they're very good at it and they're very good at destroying things. That's their superpower. They're great at wrecking things, and they're wrecking each other right now, which is wonderful.
Yeah. And you had told me that Donald Trump is not exactly like rolling in cash. So this is going to be very costly financially. And correct me if I'm wrong, but is there do the big donors, like let's call them rhinos, they're still not really they're not in Trump's camp. They're really more in the DeSantis camp. So from a money standpoint, Ron DeSantis probably has a little bit more to play with in just getting out of friggin' Florida, really, beating Trump. And maybe Trump doesn't have, but still, so obviously, who's the voter that's voting for DeSantis and not voting for Trump? This is what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay, well, there's two big things right there, but I do want to go back and talk about the money, because nobody ever talks about that. I don't really see that talked about on TV or in the press very much, but that's an important point. So take 2016. What Trump did is he put in some of his own money then. It's the only time he's ever done that. Together with this massive grant, he got all the small donor dollars. And then late, when he secured the nomination, the big donors went all in. 2020, he got everybody. He got all the money, all the small donors, the big donors, he got them all. So now he's got this dual problem, which is a lot of the money that he raises for his PAC is not being used to campaign. It's being used on Trump Force One. It's being used for employ all of his family members and friends. I mean, there's so many fingers in the pie, all these influencers, all these people. So, and lawyers, a lot of it is going to legal fees. So, the money he has coming in are hardly any big donor money. It's all this small donor money, but that he's not getting all of it. Now some of that is going to other candidates. So he doesn't have the full small donor pie. He doesn't have the big donors, and he's got money going out to all these ancillary things that have nothing to do with the campaign. So, and this is only going to get worse as time goes on. So, in terms of once he has to start spending money on commercials and ad buys and stuff, it's going to be a bigger problem. And the more DeSantis becomes viable and does better in the polls, it's going to be even harder for him to raise money. So there's that part of it. So there's two categories of who are the DeSantis voters. Two categories. One is the establishment people, the big donors that you talk about. What do big Republican donors care about? They only care about one thing: betting on the winning horse. That's all they care about. They don't care about ideology. They don't care about personality. They don't care about anything. They just want to be on the winning team because they want something. They want something from the president. They want something from the government, whether it's for their business or whatever. So they want to make sure to back the winner. And they're making the calculation that Trump's indictments are going to derail his candidacy. So they're basically placing a bet on Fani Willis and Jack Smith, and saying that they're going to defeat Trump. They're going to knock him out. And they're in on the ground floor of President DeSantis, right? So that's one category of people, or is the country club Republicans, the money guys that are scattered around the country. The second group of Republicans is that I think a lot of the evangelicals, the stuff that are just tired of Trump's bullshit. They made the deal with Trump. They held their nose. They got their 3 Supreme Court justices. They got Roe, but they've already wrung that sponge. They've gotten everything that they wanted out of Trump already. And they don't like the January 6th. They don't like the mean tweets. They don't like the fact that he's not a godly person. And I think that a lot of them are they're looking at Pence, they're looking at Haley, they're looking at Scott, they're just looking away from Trump right now. And so the question is, can Ron DeSantis capture those people? That's the big question,
Which is interesting because so many questions, but which is interesting because he seems to think the strategy is to run to the right of Trump on so many issues.
This is the mistake.
Right. So, right. Like the people you're talking about.
He's not going after those people.
Right. They don't want to the right of Trump.
Yeah.
They want competency, which Ron DeSantis on his face seems to be more competent, more educated than Trump, right? But what he's done instead, you said it's a mistake, is he has made these agendas of going after woke ideology, attacking Disney. Even Rubio criticized him for attacking Disney. And again, that speaks to his like revenge porn thing. But then there's this vaccine issue that I don't know. So this is an interesting question because I don't know if it's smart or not smart for him to be running to the right of Trump on this, because you posted a video of Trump talking about the vaccines the other night.
That's dumb.
But Trump is still getting hit for that, for being responsible for Operation Warp Speed. Yeah. So where does the vote come down on these, especially that issue? But like, is that a mistake too for DeSantis?
No, I mean, those are people where, I mean, look, here's the thing. If DeSantis wants to run on like an anti-vax, I was wide open on COVID agenda, again, who are the people who are in the Republican Party who are all about that, or the MAGA people?
Yeah.
So, and yes, that's a little Achilles heel of Trump, is that he likes to brag about warp speed and talk about how many millions of lives he personally saved by inventing the vaccine himself in a lab in the back room of the White House.
It was Ivanka. So you've seen
he wants to brag about that. Yeah, but his base hates it. His base hates the vaccine. None of them got the vaccine, They
were told not to.
So like DeSantis, it's sort of like DeSantis is like facing these like two armies. One is in this impregnable fortress and the other one is out on a plain. And what he's deciding is, I'm going to go fight the fortress. I'm going to try and battle away to try and peel off 5% of that 35% of the Republican Party that's fully MAGA. I'm going to do everything I can to win over that 5%. And in so doing, I'm going to piss off the other 65% of the Republican voters. That's basically what DeSantis is doing right now, which is because I think that he set up his whole persona as being like a Trumpy guy.
Yeah.
So he doesn't know how to pivot away from that now.
Yep.
He doesn't know how to become a mainstream Republican. And that's his path to victory, I think, is you carve out, you make yourself attractive to the mainstream of the party, and then you let the indictments roll. And then you just go, look, to all of you who want to win, this guy can't win. Right. He's under 40 indictments, 40 felonies in 3 different places. So, but DeSantis is not doing that, and that's the part I don't get, from a strategy standpoint.
So in that article that I was referencing before, apparently he doesn't listen to many outside voices. He listens to Casey, who you said has terrible political instincts. So he did say he was going to start maybe entertaining the idea of listening to people from the outside, but they would be telling him just what you just said, and how much time does he have to make that pivot, really? I mean, like, is that even possible at this point?
A few months. I mean, 3-4 months, he could do it. I think, like, he has the people in place that want to help, like guys like Karl Rove, see, the thing is, he doesn't want to take the ridicule for bringing these people onto his team.
Right.
When the word got out that Karl Rove was advising him and Jeb Bush was advising him, and all the MAGA people went nuts, you're going to be a Jeb Bush, he should have owned that. He should have just said, okay, so what? You stick with Jason Miller and Stephen Miller and Rick Grinnell, and I'll take Karl Rove and Jeb Bush and some of these other people, and we'll roll it out. Let's see who's going to win. But he's not doing that. Like, he got defensive about the fact that he may be getting advice from the old Bush Republicans.
Yeah.
So, but these are the people who know how to orchestrate a pivot. They know how to do it. These guys are old pros.
Right.
But see, when you're constantly trashing the establishment and you're calling them deep state and rhinos, and then you're going to go turn to them and ask for their help. It's tough,
Yeah. And honestly, let's just say hypothetically, he does somehow manage to emerge from this fight with Trump. I don't see how that happens, but let's just say that he does. That field is so crowded. Like I don't know if we're back in 2016 again, right? Like they've all flooded the plane, and what they're going to do is split support, right? It's really just sort of a repeat, and they're all kind of doing the same thing to a lesser degree that he's doing. No one is going after Trump. Like they're still aiming their sights on Biden when they really need to be focusing on Trump, but they're all afraid to do that. And you have your finger on the pulse of what MAGA world is like, and there's rabid support more than most. Is there enough of that with that split vote for all the other guys that Trump emerges at the end of the day again?
Yeah, well, it's an electoral strategy. See, DeSantis needs those people out of this race.
Yeah.
Trump wants all that. I mean, that's why every time one of these people announce, Trump puts out a tweet or saying, this is great. Tim Scott is a great guy. He's a wonderful guy. Welcome to the race. He's going to be a formidable candidate. Then he did that with Nikki Haley, and he did that with Vivek, and he's going to do it with Pence. He's going to praise when Pence gets in. He's going to praise Pence. He's going to say, welcome to the party. So he's not going to say that about Chris Christie or John Bolton if they get in, but he will say that about the others because he wants them in, because he knows that they're not going to go after him, that they don't have the stomach for it, and they probably all want to be VP anyway. So they're not going to piss him off. So, and they're going to take away support from DeSantis. So the key for DeSantis is to get all them out, all the dwarves out, of the race as soon as possible, after the indictments come down.
Yeah, so let's get to the indictments, because there's a lot of questions about the indictments. But the breaking story this week is the audio recording or recordings that Jack Smith has. This is a leak, I guess, that we found this out, that he has of Trump in Bedminster talking to two people who were there, I guess, interviewing him about a Mark Meadows book or something. But he's talking about having in his possession classified documents related to an attack on Iran, and how he acknowledges in the audio recording that he knows he's not supposed to have these things. And I guess he's sharing them with these writers, which there's layers and layers to unpack here of I know I've said, and I put this in my Substack the other day, I've said he's fucked so many times at this point that if I had $1 for every time I said it, I would be bankrolling like Jared Kushner's failed real estate ventures, because that's how often I've said it. But this feels like he's pretty fucked. If this is true, how many crimes did he admit to, essentially, right there? And Well,
here's the problem. I mean, when the document stuff first broke, they all ran out there, and their defense was, that Trump prayed over the documents, that when at the time that they were all leaving, the documents were leaving the White House, Trump stood over them and said, I hereby declassify you. And Kash Patel, of course, is his witness that he did that.
Yeah.
Whenever Trump needs a witness and no one else is available, Kash Patel is always there.
Of course. What
do you need me to say, boss?
In his leather pants.
Very familiar that in the criminal defense world, when we need a witness to say something, there's always that person available.
Yeah.
So Kash is that guy, has always been that guy for Trump. Before that, he was that guy for Devin Nunes. So he was Devin Nunes' chief of staff when Devin was in the House.
I didn't know.
Yeah. So what were we talking? Oh, so the problem is that was their whole defense, was that Trump declassified everything. Yeah. And when all these experts go on and say, well, that's not the way documents get declassified, what they're saying is totally irrelevant because the president is different and none of those rules apply to the president. And that's basically their defense. The problem with this is that apparently in the recording, Trump said, look, this stuff is classified, so I can't show it to you. I'll tell you a little bit about it, but I can't show it to you because it's classified. Well, okay, wait a minute. If you declassified them, why are you telling this guy a year later that it's classified still?
Right.
Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? Kind of undercuts the whole defense. So
Right.
yeah, that's the problem for him. And then the other thing is, like, what I was frustrated me about the Caitlin Collins town hall and everything, and what I've repeated over and over again is people do ask him questions about the documents, but they always ask him like process questions, but they never ask him this question, which is, Mr. Trump, why did you take these documents? Why did you take these specific documents? What did you want them for? What did you need them for? And this is the question that's never really been asked of him. And so what this could show is really the why behind him taking the documents, which is, do I think he was like selling them to foreign governments? No. I mean, a lot of people on progressive Twitter think that. But I think he just liked to show off. He liked to show clout. He liked to show that he was a big man. But in the case of these particular documents, there was another motive, which was he wants to, apparently there was a dispute about invading Iran, late in his term, late in his presidency, where he claims that Milley wanted to do it, but he stopped Milley. And I think that what some people are claiming is the opposite, that Trump wanted to do it and Milley stopped him. So he held on to these documents because it's about that dispute. And so he supposedly wanted these to be able to, because they reinforced his side of the story, that he was the one who prevented us from going into Iran. So you see there's a motive now for taking these documents. He didn't just take them just as like souvenirs or to write his memoirs. He took them for a political reason. And so that's even more nefarious.
Right. That's so interesting, because I didn't know the Milley component to that, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least if Trump were the one behind it attacking Iran. Like, that sounds very much in line with something he would say. And so I was listening to some legal experts saying that this looks pretty much like a slam dunk in terms of a conviction, an indictment for sure, but a conviction. I know that's like soothsaying and like, reading tea leaves and stuff. But let's just say if this is true, and if, to your point, he took them for political reasons, which like the guy who extorted Ukraine would do that. We know that. And this proves to be true. It's difficult to imagine a scenario where he doesn't get convicted, indicted, and then convicted for this. That's
when the schedule becomes really interesting, because let's say, so supposedly some of the document indictments, or the rumor is July.
Yeah, I heard that.
And the rumor is for Fannie's case, she's already said August. She's going to make a decision. So let's say that those two things happen. And then you still have the January 6th investigation going on.
And New York in January or March or whatever.
Yeah, you're right. So New York, we have New York that's already out there. So the question then becomes is like, schedule-wise, it's unlikely that those cases would come up for trial prior to the election. So they would be pending cases where they would be ongoing. But the thing is, a lot of the evidence in those cases would be made public, presumably, and so some of it. And so that's the other question that you're going to have here is like, do you elect somebody as the president-elect who has a trial date in January? Can he pardon himself? Well, he can. Can a president pardon himself is a constitutional question that has never been answered. We don't know. We don't know. At that.
Yeah.
If a president can pardon himself, it's never been tried or challenged. Presumably, yes, but we don't know. He can't pardon himself for Georgia. So you could have in theory, a president taking office, immediately pardoning himself. That challenge then goes to the Supreme Court and going to trial in Georgia on multiple felonies. So what happens if the president gets convicted and sentenced to prison in Georgia? In Georgia, I mean, it's like the scenarios are just mind numbing. And I think that when you present them to the voters, they're going to go, well, we can't do that. We can't do any of that. That imperils the security of the country, the stability of the country.
Yeah. And I think he's especially adept at exposing all of the cracks and fissures in our Constitution, because like you said, this has never happened before. This is not a question we've ever had to face. And he's set the record for like those kinds of questions. But there is some also argument that you can't prosecute a sitting president, right? So even
but
if
that's while for crimes committed like while in office and stuff. But also, yeah, but if the prosecutions have already started before he takes office, that's
right,
different.
but that's the question though, because
Yeah.
this has never been tested. So
Right.
yeah, and again, you just said, the voters look at that and they're like, you know what, I don't want to risk this. And honestly, I do believe that as a whole, as we saw in 2020, that there is more reasonable people out there than there are these crazy fanatic MAGA rabid cultists. I really do. At the end of the day, like I've got Republicans in my family who voted for him twice, who I don't think after January 6th would have the appetite to do this again. I really don't. So I guess I'm sort of like encouraged by that, but not entirely, because I mean, I can't even believe that we're actually having this conversation after January 6th occurred, that this is still the person we're talking about. But he has a track record of losing. He lost in 2020.
Yeah.
He lost them tons and tons of seats in the midterms of 2022. He's got a track record for being a loser. Plus, he's just awfully distasteful and awful. And what promises with these indictments is just more chaos. So hopefully
So what do they do though? Let's say Trump's the nominee. This is why I've talked about why I predicted there would be the biggest undervote in history. Undervote means like people are still going to show up and vote, but they're not going to vote in that race.
Yeah.
We really saw it a lot in 2016 that happened because, and I was one of them. Yeah. There were people who didn't like either candidate. So they voted in all the other races and just didn't vote in that race. And I think that with 70% of the country saying they don't want to see a Trump-Biden matchup, and that includes a lot of Democrats, that you're going to see, I think, if that is in fact the matchup, you're going to have, I think, millions and millions of Americans, more than any in history, who are just simply not going to vote in that race. So I don't think these people are going to vote for Biden. I don't think we can hope for that. I think what we can hope for is that they just don't vote. Right.
And yeah, I guess we'll see. I mean, if you had asked me, and I remember our friend Aaron Rupar posted something way back in 2020 about how he thought Trump would be the nominee in 2024. And I was like, you're wrong. You're crazy. There's no way. After January 6th, he's gone. He's toast. They're going to jettison him. He's too toxic. This is the time they're going to off ramp. Well, I was wrong about them overturning Roe. And I realized that I'm really bad. My Achilles heel is that I give them more credit all the time than I should. But I really didn't think that we would be looking at this as a reality. And it is increasingly becoming a reality that it is going to be a Biden-Trump rematch, which is crazy to me. But here we are.
Well, I mean, it's a failure of leadership of the Republican Party that he's still viable. I mean, he was going to run again because this is his life now. Yeah. As I've said before, his most successful business enterprise is running for president. I mean, it's his most successful and profitable business that he has. Right. All his other businesses lose money. The money keeps rolling in.
Yeah.
So he was definitely going to run. And plus, he also believes that this insulates him to some degree from prosecution, was his theory.
Right.
This is why he constantly tweets out election interference. Because now he can say, which he does every day, that all of these prosecutions are just because he's running for president and you're trying to stop him from running for president. And that's why these prosecutions are happening. So I always knew he was going to do this. But what we hoped was that Ronna McDaniel, Kevin McCarthy, some of these others, Lindsey Graham, the leaders of the party, Ted Cruz, would have a confab with him down at Mar-a-Lago and have a come to Jesus and sit down with him and go, look, dude, we're not going to support you anymore. We're not going to get behind you. You're on your own. And I think that would have really isolated him and maybe derailed him. But of course they didn't do that because, their own voters still love him, and he raises a ton of money for the party. So he's still their meal ticket.
It's crazy. It's crazy that they've maintained their relationship with him and that they had a chance. They did have a chance. I believe that after January 6th, 100%.
I mean, McCarthy going down to Mar-a-Lago that was it. That was it.
I mean, we all saw the reactions in the immediate wake of that attack. And Lindsey Graham, I'm out. That's it. Infamously, I'm done. I mean, everybody except for
That
Ted
lasted until he got to the airport.
Yep, and then he got food.
Chased through the airport by the angry MAGA people from January 6th.
Yes.
You know, that had come straight from, you know, their hotel rooms from January 6th to chasing Lindsay through the airport. Yeah.
A lot of them have probably served prison terms.
Lindsay, I'm out lasted 24 hours. It lasted until he got to the airport.
They really are such spineless, craven fucks. But I don't know if I'm allowed to swear in here, but I did it anyway. Well, I guess that wraps things up for us. Thank you so much. I love talking to you. Someday I want to talk to you about Marge, because I know we have a lot to talk about Marge and her new boy toy,
Sure.
And her just awfulness. But next time.
And I know her boyfriend. So yeah.
You do?
Yes, I talk to him sometimes.
Really?
Sure.
Interesting.
Yes.
I almost feel bad for the guy. I'm not gonna lie. I almost kind of feel like,
yeah, it's not gonna be like a long-term thing. They think it will be, but it ain't.
I just can't imagine. Like, I can't imagine being Casey DeSantis. And if this story about Ron DeSantis mispronouncing Thailand as Thailand as a test, a litmus test, is true, then she is the perfect person for him. Because apparently, did you hear this story? Like, if they corrected him on him mispronouncing Thailand as Thailand, then he knew the date was over and that wasn't someone he could date, and maybe she didn't correct him. But I can't imagine choosing Ron DeSantis in a million trillion years. But can you imagine choosing Marjorie Taylor Greene? Like, I just don't. I
talked to Brian, but we don't talk about that. I don't think that's really something he would want to discuss with anybody, but that would be an interesting question for him, which is what is it about her that, you know, caused you to leave your wife and kids? Yeah. I'm not seeing it, but you know,
I know maybe
he's very caught up in the MAGA thing now. And he was a local broadcaster in Texas. He was a local news guy, when he decided he got really caught up in this whole MAGA thing and left that job to go work for Right Side. And so, yeah, he's kind of like gone all in down. It's sort of like somebody who starts a heroin, you know, addiction, and it starts out like a recreational thing. And before you know it, you're living in an opium den, you know, somewhere in the seedy part of town. And that's where he's at right now.
But in MAGA's case, you're wearing a brick wall suit or like a star-spangled singlet, and you're like,
yeah, that's Brian. He's all in, you know,
waiting in some field.
It's weird because he is like a nice guy. He really personally is a nice guy. So yeah, it's hard to figure it all out.
I bet you
never know what goes on between two people behind closed doors, right? And in this case, we really don't want to know.
Oh, but we know more than
him, like chained up.
Yeah. You know she's a freak.
Like, got a whip and she's just beating him.
You know she's a freak, and he's whatever. Look, I mean, she had her own fair share, but the tantric sex guru guy, we know that Marge has got some shit going on, and you don't act like that outwardly, that angry, that angsty, that like, there's not some shit going on. I mean, people, I guess, could say that about me, but I digress. Anyway,
we'll do another show on that.
We'll bring props for that one. But good luck with the rest of your Politico thing. That's awesome. Thank you so much. This was awesome. I love talking to you as always. And this was my first podcast ever. So thank you so much for being my first guest.
You're gonna do great. Okay.
Thanks. All right.
See you, Joe.
See you later.
If you're looking for more content from me, you can find me over on Substack at Are You Effing Kidding Me by JoJo from Jerz, or you can check out my Patreon, also JoJo from Jerz. On my Patreon, I get a little bit more personal. I try to get to know everybody on there, and that's another way to find some exclusive content. The links are going to be in the bio, so check it out.